everybody. I'd like to welcome our City Biz audience to what I'm sure will be an insightful interview with James-Christian Blockwood, a dynamic leader in civic engagement and creating the healthy self-governance that our country so badly needs. He's had a distinguished career. He's currently Executive Vice President of the Partnership for Public Service, and they do a wide variety of work that we'll get into, whether it's involved with innovation and technology and democracy, or the presidential leadership transition, or leadership and collaboration programs. I could go on and on about the history of James-Christian and of the work he's done before he was with the Partnership for Public Service. I believe he had a lengthy career as a senior executive for service in the U.S. government. I might have the name of that wrong. James, what is that organization?
So I worked across four federal agencies, but I was a career member of the Senior Executive Service.
That's it. Okay. I got that wrong. So we could go on and on, but since I want to ask you lots of questions rather than talk about the past, when you think about the last year, 2023, or the first 3 months of 2024, what do you see as your greatest accomplishments, and at the same time, the biggest challenges as you reflect back for the last 12, 14 months?
First, let me just say thank you for the invitation to join you. This is an important initiative, and I appreciate you reaching out and offering me this platform. Let me start by saying the Partnership for Public Service is a nonpartisan nonprofit that is seeking better government and a stronger democracy. And we try to do that in various ways. And when I think about what has been most impactful in the last year, I'd like to point to maybe three different things. One thing that we really emphasize is talent in government. And that means at every level, and that's early in the entry into government, all the way to bringing very senior officials on, whether it's a career or a political appointee. And one thing we're really proud of is in the last year, we've brought dozens through cohorts of interns and those working on issues like cybersecurity into government through different programs. And if you look at the long 20 plus history of the partnership, we've brought in hundreds into government. And so that would be one thing that I would point to. The second would be our work in leadership. We believe leadership, specifically as it relates to public service leadership, which is different from any other kind of leadership, is fundamentally important. And if we had to make one of our largest bets on any one area of our work to transform government, it would be in leadership. And this past year, we've trained more than 7,000 leaders and helped them with their development and understanding of their role and their ability to serve the American people. And that was through our leadership model that we've helped explain those important aspects of it. And at its core is public trust and public commitment. And if you look at the program that's been in existence for more than a decade, we've probably trained over 50,000. And so I would say that's another one of our accomplishments. And then the third area that I'd want to point to is our work that we do to improve trust and really the relationship that society has with government. And we do this in a number of different ways. One I want to point to is our Service to America medals, which highlights the really good work of federal employees. This past year, we highlighted and celebrated more than 24 employees that worked across issues such as helping to prevent organized crime, helping to look at opioid treatment, helping to understand maybe some different celestial threats that are coming from space and our ability to counter them, and even looking into fraudulent activities around student loans and other programs. And what that does is we highlight all of the work that they're doing, and we've done that for a number of years. We've probably highlighted the good accomplishments of more than 700 federal employees. And why I think this is really important is the trust relationship between society and government is on a decline. Only 1 in 4 people really trust that government is going to do the right thing the majority of the time. And that's a really low figure. And one of the things to do to improve trust is to help the American public understand how is government working for them. So to just briefly sum it up, the things that we're most proud of, or at least I am, that the organization is working on is our ability to help place people into government. what we're doing to develop our leaders, to help them transform the work that they're doing in government, and our efforts to really promote and highlight what government is doing to improve trust and the relationship to society.
Well, seemingly those might not be connected, but the first thing that came to mind, that you spoke of trust in government, and we are currently having a problem with that. There's a lot of distrust of our institutions. We can get political about that and play the blame game and blame this politician or that politician for the reason why, or it could be social media. But regardless, there is a trust in government issue. And at the same time, you spoke of the program you're doing of bringing talent to government. So do the two conflict in a way? Does it make your job harder? Do people say, James-Christian, I don't want to be involved in government. I don't trust the institutions. If I do get involved, there's no upside for me. I can't change anything. It's the way it is. Is it more difficult now in your long career to bring people into government?
Yeah, well, first, I'd highlight something that you pointed out. There's a real trust deficit right now, and we certainly need to work on that. And government has a lot of work to do. I found two things to be true. One, when people know of the good work government is doing, they want to be a part of it. They appreciate it. They want to help government serve their communities and people like themselves. The other thing, though, is when the barriers to get into government, whether that be the application process, whether that be they don't understand what government does for them and how they can contribute to that mission, or the unfortunate thing, which is kind of now more the trend, they start not to trust that government is working on their behalf and doing the things that they expect government to do. That can certainly hurt people's opinion of government and then have them not wanting to necessarily be a participant or a supporter of what government is trying to do. And so the programs that we mentioned, like the Service to America medals and some of the work that we do on the leadership side to make sure that our leaders in government understand their roles and that they are able to meet the moment and serve people well, all of that affects the talent. And that affects people who want to be a part of it. And it helps with the recruitment of those folks when they understand what government is trying to do and that they can be a part of it. But you're absolutely right. There's a trust deficit. Government has to work on that. And if we don't, you will see the numbers of folks that are trying to help government go into government continue to decline.
Is the leadership program mostly with elected or non-elected government workers, or a combination of both? Or, or am I off base in suggesting that maybe elected officials really don't want to be a part of leadership training?
Well, we have a full range of programs that's at every career level, starting from the entry level all the way to the most seasoned. It includes people who are at the team level and leading of individuals and leading themselves, the people that are leading teams, and people that are leading organizations. It is both career officials and political appointees. And we offer that through cohort development and training. We offer that through individual sessions and different retreats and executive sessions to help leaders. And there's just a number of ways to look at how to improve one's leadership. Where I would like to maybe focus some attention is something that you said about not necessarily only elected officials, but many individuals find leadership exhilarating, and it's something that they know that will help them do their job better. But there's not always enough time to commit to it. There's not always the right understanding of how it will help them individually. And so that is one thing that the Partnership for Public Service is trying to do, is be this hub for career federal officials to come and think about thought leadership around what it means to be a leader, be able to convene with each other and understand how they can work collectively to be better leaders, expose them to different leadership principles and practices and the public service leadership model to help them become better leaders. And again, that's at every level of one's career, both career officials that are in government like civil servants and political appointees that are appointed by the president and then oftentimes also confirmed by the U.S. Senate.
Fascinating. Is business involved at all? Are business leaders involved at all in trying to perhaps pass some of their skills and in leadership skills over to government workers, or are the two not related at all? And or does business leaders feel that they don't have the time for this and they'll focus elsewhere? I'm just curious how much involved they are.
Well, I think one, I would say that what it means to lead in government is certainly different from what it means to lead in private sector. There are just principles and aspects of that are fundamentally different. That being said, the Partnership for Public Service has a government advisory leadership council that includes a number of former cabinet officials, former business sector executives, former Fortune 500 CEO, president and CEOs, that we leverage their expertise and their knowledge and help to, one, bring leaders together that are currently in government, but two, inform our curricula that we use to help develop and train government leaders. So while we don't have our direct relationship with business itself, we certainly leverage all of the business competencies and practices on leadership and have a really, really outstanding leadership council. I hope that we can share some information at some point about how to go and see those that are on our council and the work that they're doing to help government leaders right now.
Well, why don't we talk about that right now? Why don't you tell me a little about how the Leadership Council works? And I'm sure I'll have some questions after I hear about it.
Yeah. The first thing I would say is when we look at the model that I referred to before, public service leadership model, it has a number of competencies. One that I think is particularly important is self-awareness. Another is leading change and leading results and working collaboratively in building coalitions. And that model comes from a lot of the experience that some of these business executives, as well as former government officials, believed were helpful to them in their work. And we also have academics and people who are practitioners of leadership on this council as well. And so the model was developed with them and from their knowledge to best serve the American people. And that has helped us because we've tried to take that model and make sure it is a part of all of our different offerings and development and the work that we do on leadership. And so that would be one way. Another is you can always learn from people's experiences. And the Partnership for Public Service does a lot of convening of leaders, and we put on different forums on a range of topics, whether that's looking at how artificial intelligence may affect government services in the future, whether that's looking at trust in government and how to tackle that complexity there, or many other issues. And when we look for thought leaders and keynote speakers and people to come and help us work through these really tough, complex issues, we often turn to that leadership council. Now, we also have a number of other councils and advisory bodies and our relationships to other leaders across various sectors that we would obviously invite into those conversations as well.
Well, it's certainly needed. Our politicians these days tend to want to avoid any nuance. They want to simplify things. It's either this or that. So after hearing you talk about leadership, great leadership to me is realizing our complex problems are just that. They're complex. And great leadership needs to be aware of that complexity. They need to be critical thinkers so that we can really address and solve these great problems. And related to a nuance, do politicians try to get involved, try to influence your work at all, or is that really a non-issue? You pretty much focus on your approach to improving government, to leadership and collaboration, and to finding great new leaders of the next generation for our government. And elected officials pretty much let you do your work, or do they try to influence you in any way? I'm just curious how that might work.
We are firmly, staunchly a nonpartisan organization. It's something that I believe in myself very personally, very strongly. And I think that is what makes us unique as an organization. We focus exclusively, at least for now, on the federal government. And while there are many officials that would offer their opinions and their insight, and we would certainly want to work with them and understand any perspectives they'd have to offer, all of our work that we do really is for the American people. It's evidence-based. It's part of our theory of change, and it is for government. And so we work with a lot of career civil servants. We work with political appointees, all really to make sure that government is most effective and working in the right ways. And so I wouldn't necessarily say that there's undue influence. What I would say is, though, for those that are all in agreement with the mission and are passionate as we are to try to help change government for the better and to make it the best government that we can, that it serves all people, we certainly want to work with them and learn from them.
I wonder if you find the same thing I find, because I'm in this field as co-founder of the Bridge Alliance, and people tell me all the time I'm wasting my time because this is the way government is, and you can't change it. It's just a big bureaucracy. Do you get a lot of that negativism that you're wasting your time? Hey, how can you make things better? There's so much. It's all about money and corruption and power. Do you have that to fight at all?
It's certainly a fight, and it's certainly one that I welcome, and one that I take on squarely, and one that I think the Partnership for Public Service takes on as well. There could be an argument that our government is the greatest entity on Earth currently, and perhaps in the history of our world. And I could certainly have lots of reasons and ways to defend that statement. Even if you think of things in context, our budget is roughly more than $6+ trillion, serving more than 300 plus million people, and doing that across our entire country and many diverse communities, and number of services that most people don't even know that the federal government provides, or provides oversight of, or provides access to. And that in and of itself is just a complex ordeal, and something of just such a huge nature that I could understand that people have a sense of either apathy or disbelief, or it may take some convincing that this fight is worth it. What I can say is, at least in my experience, when you think about the most catastrophic things, whether that be like a recent pandemic, economic turmoil, military conflict, the most catastrophic things, most people will then look to government to help. And over time, while government has not always gotten everything right, by all estimation, and in my view, has always delivered. And so I think there's a good track record for our government. Now, again, I'm leaving a lot of room for where we can do better, be more effective, more efficient. But on the large things that matter most, I believe government has gotten it right and has come to the aid of the people it's supposed to serve. And so while there may be people who maybe don't understand how government serves them, maybe aren't as motivated to say that this effort to improve government and make it more effective is worth it, and they may say government accountability or effectiveness is somewhat of an oxymoron, I would say look at what government has done for us. Look at what is capable of doing for us if we support it and nourish it going forward. And we have lots of opportunity and lots of reason to be hopeful about the work we're trying to do at the partnership to strengthen government.
Well, that leads me to my next question in a way, because in addressing your optimism and your belief that while not perfect, government still is to be trusted, it still has a vitally important role in everybody's lives. Has the work of the Partnership for Public Service changed a bit in terms of the aspect of your work, in terms of rebuilding trust in government? Is that now a much bigger focus of your work, particularly with what's going to be an extremely divisive, I'm not making a outlandish prediction, it's pretty much common sense that the upcoming election is going to be extremely divisive. Do you focus more on trying to rebuild trust despite this hopefully short-term situation that's going to create less and less trust? How do you fit into that?
Well, there's certainly a lot going on in the external environment that has impacted a number of organizations, the Partnership for Public Service included. And one of the things that we recently did was complete our strategic plan. And as part of that strategic plan, we highlighted 4 priorities. One is on ourselves and making sure we have the right people, the right resources to make sure that we can carry out our mission. But the other 3 are very programmatic. And one of them is around society's commitment to government, and is around trust. And so we're responding very much to this external environment as to where we think things are, what needs to be improved, and helping through this priority around trust, helping government not only to be trusted, but quite frankly, to be trustworthy. And there's a lot of work to do there. And so that would be one shift that I would say the Partnership for Public Service has looked at the environment and has been responsive to it and has shaped our priorities and our programming because of that. I would also add that the partnership has been at the forefront of some of this work for some time. When you mention the elections and you mention that period between now and the elections and what could happen, there's a lot of cause for division. There's a lot of things on the policy and politics side that need to happen and will play out. One thing that does not get as much attention is the management side and what needs to happen from a transition standpoint from one administration to the next. And in this case, where we have our presumptive nominees and who we think are going to be representative of the different parties, you are likely going to have a second term president one way or another. And the Partnership for Public Service has a program, the Center for Presidential Transition, that has been a leader in helping government to understand its responsibilities, helping it to make sure that it does all of the requisite things to ensure a smooth and peaceful transfer of power, which is truly a hallmark of our democracy. And we do that by working with current administration officials, transition teams, as well as candidate teams, and the candidates themselves to help prepare them to understand what those responsibilities are, what those best practices in that transition management might be. And ultimately, I think that will help with how people can have more confidence in the duties that government must do during this time period.
We've talked so much about the great work of the Partnership for Public Service, but what we haven't discussed is something that I know you're extremely focused on. I'm extremely focused on with the work I do with the Bridge Alliance, and that's the division in our country. And there's many philosophies about what is the cause of that division. Is it social media? Is it the current set of politicians? I know you have a lot of knowledge about this, so I'd love you to give us your insights, James-Christian, on what are the causes of this division.
Yeah, and this is work that you have been working on for decades and have really helped to advance, is to bring different factions together. And what's unfortunate is that we're seeing more of a divide, and things are unfortunately getting worse. You know, the cause of division, in my view, it really comes down to three things: information, leadership, and lack of discourse. And I think from an information perspective, we aren't using data to its fullest capability. We're making decisions off of data that could be either flawed or that we'd have to question the sources or question the intent of the person providing the information or data. We're in an era of hyper-partisanship, and we're also really using data and information in malicious ways, and we're not creating space and opportunity, as you have in a number of your different forums that you have, creating space for difference and for discussion and dialogue. On the leadership side, we don't have the same expectation we once had of our most senior leaders, and that's across industries, business and government. There isn't the same ideal and principles around what people represent, what senior leaders represent of government, of different organizations. Where are morals and values and integrity? And I think because of that, we're seeing more and more divide because of how people are leading and how they're showing up. And then the last thing I mentioned around dialogue, we have seemed to forgotten how to have respectful conversations with one another. Respectful in a way that you can disagree on a policy or an approach, but you have a way of approaching and speaking to one another that allows for continued dialogue and discourse. We use facts in ways that are not necessarily honest. And when this happens and you stop discourse, that is when we really get in trouble. When people stop talking, that's when you turn to desperation, you turn to misunderstanding, and that can lead to violence, and it can feel like you don't have any other options. And so I think a lot of, as you mentioned, division right now in our country, it's very unfortunate. And I think the way that we try to address that is making sure that we are continuing to have dialogue, because without it, you will already be defeated and more weak or weaker if you're not having the right conversations.
Well, those are powerful words, and I agree with everything you said. Not to be skeptical, but I think you probably have great knowledge about this. How does social media play into this in terms of essentially there's conflict profiteers out there, those who gain a reputation, gain a job by being the exact opposite of everything you said. So how do we fight against that? These people who thrive on conflict and disagreement.
Yeah, it's unfortunate where we are incentivizing and what we are rewarding, and in my view, in some cases, we're rewarding bad behavior. We're rewarding people that are not being as honest and truthful as they should be, and we're providing platforms to people who knowingly do this. I think that we have to get back to a place. And in my office, I have a quote on the wall by Frederick Douglass that says, "The life of a nation is secure only while the nation is honest, truthful, and virtuous." And I think we have to get back to a place where that reads true to everyone, and that we have this new technologies and ways of communicating through social media that should take that same essence of that quote and amplify it, and not do the opposite, which is to take messages that are meant to destroy, that are meant to demean, that are not respectful, and that aren't having real conversation and dialogue on really hard, complex, and important issues. We need to really address that. And I think social media can be both a powerful tool that can help bring us back together and do some of the healing I think this nation needs to do, but it could also be a very destructive one if not used responsibly.
Thank you so much for that answer. And I can go on with many, many other questions about the great work you're doing, but we're running out of time. I want to ask you a personal question, maybe as a good ending to this fascinating interview. Um, as you think back on your life, what are the life experiences you think growing up that brought you to this work as opposed to business or some other field? Were you drawn to it as a young age? Was it a being in the right place at the right time? What life experience you think has impacted you most to make this your life's work?
Yeah, I think we all have certain experiences, and I, like many others, still trying to find my way now, and I'm not entirely sure where ultimately I want to go. I just know that I want to contribute to something greater than myself. And I think at a very young age, I was fortunate. I had a father that was in the military, and he currently serves in the federal government now. I have a mother who was a very big figure in the community. You really couldn't go anywhere without someone knowing her and being very appreciative of what she's done to help them. And so having parents as examples of what it means to serve others, and whether that's serve others through their community or whether that's serve others through government, was certainly an early introduction for me as to what would motivate and drive me. And so I think seeing that and having that as an early part of my life really drove me to not necessarily knowing what I would want to do, but knowing that I wanted to serve others. And then being introduced to government through a number of various means, and that was during school and during times that I have met with colleagues and mentors. I really didn't understand the full breadth of all of the things someone can do in government. And as but maybe many others might not, I've spent my time in the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, Department of Veteran Affairs, the Government Accountability Office, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and all the roles in between were from things that had to do with analysis and management and strategy, direct services to helping people. You can have such a phenomenal career in government. And I think that really became apparent to me when I first joined government. And so the real driving and motivating factor was that introduction from my parents and kind of understanding what it means to serve. And then something I would say would probably be innate in me is that that I still want to satisfy is still trying to serve myself and still doing what I can, because I believe our government deserves the best people, deserves the most attention, and I want to play my part in doing that.
Well, thank you for those inspiring words. That's a perfect way to end, especially since I hear it so often from people. Why am I wasting my time? Government can never change. This is the way it is. And I hope that everybody in the City Biz audience and the Fulcrum audience and the democracy reform, healthy democracy, bridging field, when they hear your interview, will realize there is great hope for the future, especially with great leaders like yourself. So thank you so much, James-Christian. Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. And I've said this to you before, and I want to make sure I say it again. I think you provide a wonderful platform, and all of your work that you've done throughout your career provides a space, opportunity, and voice and platform for people. And so I appreciate you offering me this opportunity to do that.